Wonderhussie here, lounging in my bed, only, well, it's not exactly my bed. I'm in temporary quarters, and I'm not going to say too much about that right now because I have a whole video about it coming up on Sunday. Let's just say I had to stay in these temporary quarters, and I'm not able to travel anywhere this week. So I was trying to think of something I could make a video about without traveling, and since Valentine's Day is coming up on Saturday, I figured, why not talk about love? And more specifically, my love life. And what better place to talk about my love life than in bed, right? Okay, well, a lot of you might think I'm gay because I never seem to have a boyfriend. And it's true, I haven't had very many boyfriends in my life, but I'm not gay. I just don't meet very many people that I like, and I've been that way my whole life. Ever since I was in high school, I didn't really have any boyfriends the whole time I was in high school. I didn't have any boyfriends the whole time I was in college. In fact, I didn't really have any serious boyfriends at all until I was like 29 years old and had moved to Las Vegas. I don't know. I just don't meet very many people I'm attracted to. You know, they say that attraction is based on some secret sauce, pheromones. Like there's this booth at Burning Man. There's this camp at Burning Man where it's a big piece of plywood with holes cut in it, and people put their armpits. They stand behind the board with just their armpits sticking through the hole. And so the idea is you go around and sniff all the different pits until you sniff one. They go, I mean, I know it might sound kind of gross to be sniffing people's pits, especially when never mind. I was going to say when they look like mine, but the less I show on my pits in this video, the better. Anyway, you might think that's kind of gross, but no, it's true. I think the whole reason that humans have armpit hair and pubic hair is to trap pheromones so that members of the opposite sex can catch a whiff and go, oh, I like the way that guy smells. Well, anyway, I always wanted to go to that camp at Burning Man, but I never seem to have found the time. But essentially, more or less, I guess, sniffing pits is how I found all of the guys I've dated. And I haven't dated very many guys, but it's quality, not quantity, right? Okay, I don't know if it's necessarily quality, but it's definitely, let's just say there have been some doozies. And so today, I'm going to kiss and tell in a classy way. I mean, most of these guys were pretty nice guys, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I'm going to change the names. I'm not going to show anyone's face, but I'm going to tell you about 5 of my boyfriends. I guess I should say ex-boyfriends. Okay, like I said, I'm going to protect everyone's privacy and not use actual photos. Instead, I used AI to generate photos of all these guys based on my extremely accurate descriptions of them. Okay, like I said, I didn't really have any serious boyfriends at all until I was 29 years old. Okay, yeah. I'm a late bloomer. I've always been a late bloomer. I didn't get my driver's license till I was 23, and I didn't have sex until I was 24 years old. Like I said, just never really met anybody I liked. But when I was 29, I met this guy that I went cuckoo over, and in retrospect, it was probably, we weren't a good match. I mean, he was much younger than me. I was 29. I think he was 23. He was fresh out of college. He was cute as a button, and he was making good money. He was working as a casino host, okay? His job was to cold call all these degenerate high roller gamblers and try to lure them out to Las Vegas and gamble, and then he would make a commission based on not necessarily how much they lost. It was based on how much they would win or lose. It was this very complicated algebraic formula. They called it theoretical. His theoretical win or loss over a given period of time. So they called it his Theo for short. So he would call all these guys who had great Theo, and he would make a commission off it. It was actually really fun hanging out with him because, man, these guys would call him at all hours of the night. Let's just say his name was Fred. He'd get calls in the middle of the night. Hey, Fred, I need a girl. Can you send me a girl? Well, yeah, he had met a freelance escort on a party bus once, and so he knew she was cool and trustworthy, and so anytime one of his guys asked for a girl, he would call her, and she'd go to the room, and she would give him a cut of whatever the guy paid her, or sometimes they'd call him and go, "Hey, Fred, can you get me some Viagra?" Well, as it happened, his mom worked in a doctor's office, so she was able to get him Viagra samples, and he was able to take care of that, or, "Hey, Fred, can you give me some ecstasy?" Whatever. This kid catered to the needs of an astonishing array of very colorful characters. I mean, I could make a whole video talking about my life with this dude. We had a lot of fun because one of his clients in particular was this really rich stockbroker, I guess, from Chicago, but he had a broken heart. It was a terrible story. I think his high school sweetheart somehow broke his heart, and ever since then, no matter how much money he made, he just couldn't find satisfaction. So he would fly to Vegas and just blow obscene amounts of money on the craps tables. And then he would hole up in his hotel room with not necessarily an escort, but he knew some party girls that were, good to go. So he would hole up in his room with these girls and order room service, and he would only come out at like 3 a.m. to blow a bunch of money on the craps table. Well, consequently, when you gamble a lot in a casino, you get points, right? Comp points. Like say you went out and blew $100,000 at the craps table. Oh, the casino will give you free dinner, free this, free that. Well, this dude wasn't using any of his comp points because all he did was hole up in his room with these hoes ordering room service. And so my boyfriend was like, well, these comp points are going to waste. We don't want to let that casino keep them. I mean, what's the point? So we would go out to dinner. He would just impersonate the guy. They didn't ask for any ID because they don't want to offend you as a high roller. We would go to some fancy restaurant. Meanwhile, keep in mind, this kid was like 23 years old and he had this crazy spiky hairdo. He wanted to dress like an old, rich white guy from a country club. So he would buy these Ralph Lauren jackets at the outlet mall that had these obnoxious patterns on them. He drove an old man's Cadillac. He was really into the idea of being a rich old man. So we would go to these restaurants and they would go, "Okay, and how would you like to pay for this?" And he'd go, "Oh, put it on my room." And he would hand the ticket for his client, and they would go, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Brandon," and just charge it to the room, sight unseen. I mean, we went out to some really expensive restaurants that way, and no one was ever the wiser until one time we went out to eat at this fancy place at Caesar's Palace, and the guy goes, "Oh, may I see some ID with that?" But thankfully, Fred was a quick thinker, and he patted his pocket. Oh man, I left my ID in the room. I'll just pay cash. And so he had to eat that one, but it wasn't so bad because it wasn't that expensive of a restaurant. Another time, we went to eat at this place that he liked scotch. Remember I told you he wanted to be a rich old white guy. So of course he drank scotch on the rocks. Well, one time he ordered a glass of Macallan 25, and it was like $650 a glass at this douchebag restaurant in an unnamed Vegas casino. And so he's sitting there sipping his $650 scotch, and then we went and had this big dinner, and thank goodness they didn't ask to see his ID that time, because he would not have enjoyed paying that bill. Anyway, unfortunately, as much fun as I had with this kid, it didn't last that long. We ended up buying a house together, because we were together like 24/7 for about 2.5 years. Like, we did everything together. We had so much fun. He was a great guy. He is a great guy. I'm still friends with him on Facebook. But he was very white bread. He wanted to have kids and be a little league coach. In fact, he did coach little league in Vegas. And I used to go to the games, like cheer. And this is all before I went to Burning Man or did anything weird. So I was kind of like trying to, I guess, convince myself that I could marry this guy, and I could have kids with this guy, and I could bake cookies for the PTA, and he could go coach these little league games. And oh man, eventually it just became apparent that no, we weren't well suited. It wasn't meant to last. He tried to break up with me once. We were watching the Stardust implosion. Okay, you know how in Vegas they blow those hotels up when they get too old? Well, it's fun to go park and watch them blow up these hotels. So we were parked on the roof of the Wynn parking garage. I'll never forget it. Looking out the front window, we had a perfect view of the Stardust. And they set off those, how they detonate those buildings? Starts falling down, and right as it's all happening, he's having this conversation with me about how, well, maybe we should break up because we're so different. We have different goals. And I was like, no! I started crying, and somehow the fact that this hotel was crumbling at the same time, I was like, no! And I really did. I loved this kid. He was the first real boyfriend I had, and I loved him, and I didn't want to break up with him. So we stayed together and ended up buying a house, which was a terrible idea because we weren't well suited. You know, I wanted to be a freak, man. I wanted to go to Burning Man and run around howling at the moon, maybe run off and join the circus if I wanted to, and that just wasn't his style. You know, we bought this house and he made me put all my kooky stuff into this one room in the basement. Like, he had his man cave where he could watch Law and Order and baseball. That's all he wanted to watch was Law and Order and baseball. And then I had my room where I had to put all my maps. He thought maps were weird. All my mannequins, all my kooky stuff. And so we lived like that for a few months, but I'm not gonna... Nobody puts baby in the corner, okay? Nobody puts baby's crap in a kooky room. So we broke up shortly after moving into that house, and it was a bad deal because the mortgage was in my name, and oh my god, it's a whole other story. There was a lot of tears shed, there were a lot of teeth gnashed, but I made it through, he made it through, and like I said, we're still Facebook friends to this day, and I wish him well. Love you, Fred. Okay, after I broke up with Fred, I was actually pretty devastated because I did love him, I guess. And I was just used to having somebody there at all times to tell everything to. You know, like when you're in a relationship with somebody, you have somebody to tell everything to. Like, oh my god, you know what happened to me today? Or, oh, this bitch at work. Or, oh, this guy cut me off in traffic. Well, now all of a sudden, I didn't have anyone to tell those things to. And it was very lonely. And so, you know how that goes. You're on the rebound. I gotta find another boyfriend. And so, I used to go on like dating websites and stuff back then. This was around 2008, 9. And so I met this other guy who we'll call Derek. And out of all the guys I dated, I think Derek and I were probably the best suited. He was kind of weird like me. He was into camping and hiking and exploring and like just weird stuff. And the only downside is he lived really far away from me. He lived in Portland, Oregon, and I lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. And he had friends in Vegas that he would come visit every now and then. So we would hang out. I went up to Portland. But there was so much pressure on the relationship because of that. Like, when we were together, we had to, like, do all the things and get it all done. And this was right around the time I started nude modeling. And I think that made him a little bit insecure, which it would most men. You know, your girlfriend's going out posing naked for all these perverts. Just kidding, photographers, I mean. I get why he would be insecure, but it being long distance made the insecurity even worse. And eventually... I mean, we had some really good times together. We went on some crazy trips, and I don't want to give away TMI, but man, we did the nasty in some strange places, but it just didn't work out, man. I felt like he was too insecure, and we were too far apart, and he started talking about wanting to move down to Vegas, and I didn't want that because his whole life was in Portland. All his friends, his business, like, that's where he wanted to be. That was what he loved. Was Portland. I don't want him to move down to Vegas because now all of a sudden he had a couple friends in Vegas and me, and that would have been it. And so I just felt like it would have been a bad mood for him, and I didn't really want to move to Portland, even though I really like Portland, Oregon. It's too overcast. It's too cold. I need sunshine, and I love the desert. So unfortunately, we had to break up after only dating. I think we dated about a year. And then we called it quits. But I'm also still friendly with Derek to this day. He's an amazing guy. I mean, like I said, out of all the guys I dated, he's probably the one that had the most in common with me. But he's very happy now. He's been in this other relationship for many, many years and years and years. And his new girlfriend is an amazing person. She's very understanding because I've stayed at their house before when I was traveling up through Portland. Not only have I stayed at their house, but so have both my sisters. I mean, they're just great people. Anyway, I bear none of these guys any animosity. None of them. And especially not Derek. Okay, after I broke up with Derek, I kind of dated a few people here and there for a few months at a time. But I'm not going to go into every single guy I ever dated. I'm going to skip ahead to, well, I was living in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is a tough place to date, man, because it's a very transitory town. People come to Vegas, I'll live here for a while, I'll make a bunch of money, and then I'll go back home, or, you know, nobody really wants to, like, make a life in Las Vegas, so dating, at least back then, could be very complicated, and like I said, I was on a bunch of different dating websites, and Man, you gotta kiss a lot of frogs before you find a prince. A big chunk of the dating population were dudes in the Air Force, okay? Because there's 2 Air Force bases. Right around Las Vegas, there's Nellis Air Force Base, right in North Las Vegas, and there's Creech Air Force Base, just north of town. That's where they fly the drones, okay? So technically, Nellis is an Air Force Base. Creech is a chair force base. And the one guy that I'm going to talk about next, he was in the chair force, and he really didn't like it when I called it that. But, I mean, those guys that work at Creech, it's just weird for them. It's psychologically very complicated because, you know, you're living in the suburbs of North Las Vegas. They all live up north because it's an easier commute to Creech. And then you drive to work, you know, 5 days a week. Or they had this shuttle van. They would take them all up there. And then you go to the war from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then, okay, you clock out of the war and go home and go bowling. I mean, it's got to be really hard to compartmentalize that kind of thing. You know, they're sitting in a darkened trailer with a joystick, I guess, or whatever, like remotely piloting this drone. And this was back in 2012, and he couldn't tell me exactly where they were flying because, you know, it was classified, but I think it was like Yemen maybe or someplace like that. I just remember there was one day when he did have a traumatic shift at work because he had to like shoot into a pile of bodies, I feel like, to make sure they were all dead. And yeah, it didn't seem like a very pleasant line of work, and so maybe that's why this dude well, I was gonna say had some issues, but I mean, who among us doesn't have issues? He was a great guy, and interestingly, he was the only person I've ever dated that I wasn't attracted to initially. Like, I met him on a dating website, and we had a lot in common per the website's algorithm. You know, they match you up, and they go, ooh, you have 74% in common with this guy. This was a website called OkCupid, and me and him had, like, really high percentage. I can't remember what it was. So I went downtown, and I met up with him, and he was a few years younger than me, and I don't know, man. I just wasn't into him. But he was persistent. He kept texting me, like, he used to call me Miss. Hello, Miss. You want to go hiking? Hello, Miss. He was very fit. He liked hiking outdoors. And, you know, he liked to read. He was a smart guy. So eventually he wore me down, man. And I did. I came around, and I don't know if I ever loved him, but I definitely liked him. And we had some good times for about, I don't know, it only lasted about 6 months. And then one day he texted me. This is why I can't say this guy was 100% classy. He texted me to break up with me. He just said, I don't know, how are you feeling about this, Sarah? And I was like, I don't know, how should I be feeling about this? Anyway, we basically broke up, and I haven't seen him since. I don't know what happened to this dude, but hey, wherever he is, I wish him well. Okay, and that kind of ties into... I'll go ahead and call that guy Derek, because he had the same name as the other Derek. Anyway, that ties into the fourth guy I'm going to talk about here, who was also in the service, but this guy was in the actual Air Force, and I have alluded to this other guy many times over the course of my YouTube career, whenever I talk about these freaks and perverts in the Air Force. And if this guy is watching this video, I hope you know that I'm kidding. Let's just say he had a voracious and very, very varied sexual appetite. Not to say that he was bisexual, but he was just into a lot of stuff, man. And he could be... Some of it was a little kinky. Not anything like he wanted me to dress like a Nazi and, you know, shove a corn cob up his booty hole or anything like that. He was just... Well, I never sat down with him and had a conversation like, so, are you dating anyone else, or are we, like, a thing? Which I guess I should have. I don't know, call me old-fashioned, but I feel like if somebody asks you out on a date, do you really have to go, oh, sure, and then you go out on the date and you go, so, yeah, are you dating anyone else? Well, come to find out, this dude was dating at least 2 other people at the same time as me, and it blew up in a really awkward way one night. I went out to dinner with him. His birthday was the day after mine, so I think we went out to dinner for his birthday, then we went to dinner for my birthday, whatever. And we were sitting outdoors at this restaurant in Vegas, and he was on his phone all night. And this was very unusual for him, because he was kind of like not a techie guy. He had a flip phone. Now, granted, this was back in 2011, I think. So flip phones weren't that old school at that time, but he wasn't a phone guy, but he was on his flip phone texting all night. And you know how hard it is to text on a flip phone? He was, WXYZ, you had to hit the key like 4 times to do each letter. Like, I wonder why he's on and he goes, oh, I'm sorry. I'm just having a problem with my roommate. He made up something. But then after dinner, we went to sit outside and watch this performance that was going on out in front of the restaurant. And he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I gotta go. You want me to give you a ride home? And I was like, no, it's fine, I'll find a ride home from something. You know, I had friends there, whatever. Well, as soon as he left, this Asian chick came like walking out onto the patio and looking around, looked right at me and walked right over to me. And she goes, are you Sarah Jane? This is before I went by wonderhussie, I think. Maybe I was already one. Well, anyway. Are you Sarah Jane? Are you wonderhussie? Yes. Hi. I'm blah blah. Blah blah's girlfriend. What? Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize he had a girlfriend. I started crying. It's a long, boring story, but she was cool. We ended up talking on it. She gave me a ride home, actually. And I still don't know what the deal was with the story, because of course he came back with, like, wrote me this really heartfelt note. No, you don't understand. She's crazy. I'm not actually dating her. She's just obsessed with me. It's some chick that I met once. And man, I didn't know what to make of the whole thing. I was actually very hurt by it, even though we weren't like a serious thing. We just kind of, you know, now that I think about it, it wasn't really a relationship as much as a booty call. You know, like we would just go have sex. He'd come to my house or I'd go to his place, and you know, I'd go to his place and, okay, I'll be home from work at 5 p.m. So I would get to his house at like 5:15, but he would always arrange it so that he had to come home wearing his flight suit still. Like, oh, I haven't had time to change yet. I think because, you know, ladies love a man in uniform. He was trying to turn me on. I mean, he was good in the sack, I'll say that. I mean, while we're kissing and telling, I might as well divulge all the details. He was too good in the sack, I guess, and he just had to spread it around because, after that incident with this girl that he claimed was just some crazy, you know, fatal attraction thing, I went home and I blogged about it, okay? I used to write a blog back then, and of course I changed the names. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus publicly, but I wrote a blog post all about how devastated I was. I actually kind of liked the guy, even though it was just a booty call. And I guess I just sort of felt stupid, you know? I felt like a fool for thinking that I was valuable enough for someone else to be exclusive with, I guess. And so it just made me feel crappy about myself. And so I was blogging about it, trying to work through my feelings. And a third chick messaged me on Facebook, I think, hey, I've been reading your blog for a while now, and I feel like, you know, I've been feeling like we've been dating the same guy, and now I know we are. And she had all these things like, remember that time on the 4th of July when you asked him to go somewhere, but he couldn't? Well, that's because he was with me. And she had all these things. Like, I think she was dating the same friggin' dude, too. So I don't know how many girls this guy was dating, but he was a very good looking guy, and he was a fighter jet pilot, you know? I think that's, anybody who goes into that line of work probably has a type A personality, you know? And so you want to shoot your friggin' missiles into as many silos as possible, or, oh, I guess that doesn't make sense. Anyway, I guess that was just part of his personality. I will say that I have seen him in the years since. I wouldn't say we're friends, but I ran into him here and there, and he's doing great. He has a wonderful long-term girlfriend now, who they seem very happy. And I think he texted me maybe, I don't know, a year or two ago asking me something about this area, because he's very interested in this area. So he's doing all right too. So you know what? I wish him well. I wish the Chair Force guy well. I wish Derek well. I wish Fred well. And I even wish the last guy on my list well, who is coming in at number 5. And wow, what a doozy. Okay, now this last guy, I really have to be very careful about what I say about him, because he has threatened to call the cops on me if I talk about him on YouTube, I guess. So I'm going to speak in very broad general terms. I hadn't dated anyone for probably 5 years when I met this dude. And it was just one of those things, you know, pheromones. He was it's so frustrating. I would love to describe what this person looked like, because he has a very striking look. And so I was at kind of like a party, and I looked over and whoa, who is that dude? I mean, his look was just totally over the top. And so I kind of danced over next to him. We started talking, and gosh, I can't give too many. It sucks. There's all these details I want to tell you, but if I do, you might be able to figure out who it is. And I don't want you to know who it is, because out of all the guys that I've talked about today, this is the one that I have the least nice things to say about. I mean, everybody has some good, and this guy had plenty of good. You know, I'm sure he was a good guy at heart. He had a rough childhood. He had some pretty traumatic stuff happen to him when he was younger. But, you know, a lot of people have traumatic stuff happen to them. It doesn't give you license to be a jerk. And this guy was psychologically very abusive to me. I never in a million years thought, you know, I'm a strong woman, I'm independent, I'm out there sleeping in my car and pissing in a ditch. You know, would I ever date an abusive guy? Hell no. Well, I definitely wouldn't stand for a guy who was trying to punch me or choke me. I'd get out of that. But this psychological abuse is much more insidious. You know, you don't notice it at first, but he was very emotionally manipulative. I think it all stemmed from insecurity. He was a very insecure, probably still is a very insecure person. And so he was intimidated by me, and I was YouTubing at this point, and I had a decent number of followers at that time, and, you know, people were sending me gifts, and he was just freaked out by the whole situation, I think. And so he would, I think they call it negging. It's like a pickup artist kind of thing. Like, if you want a hot chick, you want to put a hot chick in her place, you say like little negative things about her and keep her constantly like unsure and insecure. And so that's what this dude would do with me. I think, I mean, he at various times told me I was ugly, I was old, I was fat. I mean, it blows my mind that I stayed with this person as long as I did. And I didn't stay with him very long. I guess I must have been in love with him, which I was party to some dysfunctional relationships when I was growing up. Or I was witness to some, and I thought, I would never get involved in something like that. Hey, never say never. When you least expect it, some dude whose armpit smells good is going to come along, and you're going to get swept up in a whole mess, and before you know it, the guy's telling you you're old, ugly, and stupid, and man, we had some, like, I can't even tell you about these experiences because you'll be able to figure out who it was. We had this one experience in particular that was really traumatic, and maybe there's a way I can tell you about it without giving it away. And I feel like this was just messed up. Okay, this guy had a very high sex drive, probably because he was, God, I don't want to give any details away, but let's just say there was a biomedical reason he had a very high sex drive. Okay. So he had to, like, do it all the time. And, you know, golly, twice a day. You know, I got other things to do, man. I got to edit videos. I want to go hiking. I want to, you know, there's more to life, right? Wait, don't answer that. Anyway, one time it was Valentine's Day, and he rented out his house on Airbnb because it was in kind of it was in an area where people wanted to come stay. Let's just say that. So he rented his house out on Valentine's, so we didn't have any place to stay. I mean, we could have stayed at my house, but I had this weird roommate, you know, it wasn't very romantic. So he goes, it was a last minute thing. His place got rented last minute. So he goes, find us an Airbnb to go stay in for Valentine's Day. At the last minute, okay, I looked on Airbnb and hotels.com and all the websites, and everything was booked. But I found this one Airbnb that I'm not going to give too many details about because I'll give it away. But it was a very unique Airbnb. Really a weird but fascinating and cool place. So I go, hey, this place is available. And one thing I'll say for this dude, he was all for it. He goes, oh yeah, that sounds cool. Let's do it. So I booked that, or he booked that, whatever. He probably made me do it. You know, that's one of the things I remember the most about the relationship is I barely knew this guy. I had been kind of hanging out with him for about a week. And we went out to this Thai restaurant in Vegas. This is the first time we went out to eat. And when the waiter brought the check, he was like, hey man, listen, I'm going to need you to start paying your share. And he just like handed me the check. I was like, this is the first time we went to dinner. And I'm not one of those women that always expects the guy to pay. Quite the contrary. I prefer to pay my half of things because that way there aren't as many expectations, if you know what I mean. But anyway, this guy, right from the get-go, he let me know. So I probably was the one who had to pay for this Airbnb too. So anyway, we go to this Airbnb, and the couple that was renting it out were confused. Had gotten confused because it was their first ever night ever renting this place out, and they lived at the place. It was a true Airbnb. Remember, back in the day, people didn't just buy properties to rent them out. Airbnb was supposed to be, oh, I have an extra bedroom. Come stay at my house so you can see what it's like to live as a local. Remember that? That's the true idea how Airbnb started out. It just got perverted over the years. Corrupted by greedy investors. Ugh, driving up rental prices for all of us. Anyway, these people, it was their first time ever Airbnb, and so they screwed up and they accidentally double booked it. So they had like a guest suite with its own private bathroom and bedroom, and the other people had already turned up, and so they were in that room. Well, this couple didn't want to turn us away because they wanted to honor the deal, and they're like, well, look, since you guys are here, we screwed up, we'll let you sleep in our bedroom. Which is kind of weird, right? I mean, sleeping in somebody else's bed, to me, it's a very personal thing. Like, whenever I go visit my mom, she's always like, oh, you can sleep in my bed, because she doesn't have a big house. Even my own mom's bed, I don't know, I just feel like, let alone these strange people running this Airbnb. But I didn't want to make a stink about it, and the dude was like, oh yes, thank you, how nice. But their bedroom was, like, this Airbnb was really weird, and the doors didn't go all the way up to the ceiling. There was like a foot gap for airflow, I guess. And so that consequently, it really wasn't a very private room. It certainly wasn't soundproof. To make things worse, the couple who owned the place were going to sleep on they had this little bed in the hallway, like right outside that room. Okay, so I'm sleeping in these people's bed. Those people, she changed the sheets, by the way, but still, those people are sleeping right outside the bedroom. The door doesn't even go all the way. There's no way I'm getting busy, Valentine's Day or no, in those kinds of circumstances. I mean, ladies, am I right? Gentlemen, am I right? Well, gentlemen, don't answer that. You're happy to do it anywhere, in a box with a fox, whatever. I didn't feel comfortable about that, but, it wasn't a problem at first. We checked in, and then we went to go get some food, and then we came back. We're coming back to the place after dinner, and it was way out in the middle of nowhere, so it was a long drive. Getting back there, he's talking about how he wants to get busy, and I'm like, no, dude, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And he got so mad, probably because of the biomedical reason that he had such a high sex drive. He had a temper as well. Boy, did he have a temper. I mean, this dude would fly off the friggin' head. Not at me, really. He never got really mad at me, but other people, like, God, driving around Vegas with him, he would cut people off, and again, I can't say too much, but I drove around with him once on a trip, and man, he cut off these bikers, and the bikers were chasing us, and he was like, is my gun under the seat? What? Gun? No! Anyway, the guy had a temper. So when I told him I didn't want to get busy in these people's bedroom with them sleeping right outside the door, he flew into a rage, basically like, you're always withholding sex, you're using it as a tool, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, motherfucker, I'm not using it as a tool, I'm just not comfortable. Whew, sorry, apparently I'm still a little bit passionate about this, but it was ridiculous. He threw this huge temper tantrum. He was kind of screaming at me, yelling at me in the car on the way back to the thing. I was driving, I'm pretty sure I was driving. And I was like, shh, shh, shh. We're about to go back in these people's Airbnb, and they're sleeping in the hallway. Like, shh. I may be a hussy, but I try to be classy. Like, we're staying in these people's house. They gave us their bed. They changed the sheets for us. The least we can do is not scream at each other. But basically, he just wouldn't give up. And so we went into the room. We came into the house. The couple was already asleep on their bed. And we went in the room and closed the door. And I mean, I did not want to have sex with that man, but he basically, he didn't force me. And I know it's kind of a hot button topic now with this Me Too stuff, like date rape and what actually constitutes rape. And I probably shouldn't say that word too many times or this video will get demonetized, but I was laying there crying while this dude had his way with me. And because I just felt like it was the quietest way to just be done with the whole thing without making a ruckus and bothering this couple who owned the place. And I felt really dirty in the morning, like really depressed about myself. Like, why did I do that? Why did I let this dude do this to me? Like, why am I with this dude? But I still was into him even after that. I mean, I was pissed at him for a day or so, but we had this weird chemistry, I guess. And so I ended up hanging out with him for another couple weeks. And then after that, I was like, screw that, I'm out of here. Well, guess what? It didn't even end then, because there was a big situation that happened globally right after that, and I ended up getting sucked into way more than I ever wanted to, but that was pretty much it, man. After that Valentine's Day incident, you know, it was downhill from there. So eventually, it was very painful. I don't know how, how I was in love. Maybe I was just in lust with somebody like this, but it was really hard for me to leave him. Every time I would try, he would start crying, and then I'd feel sorry for him, and I wasted way too much time and energy on him. But eventually I did finally cut the cord and left, and I tried to stay friends with him, but he wasn't interested. We'll never be friends. We can only be lovers, is what he said. I'm like, okay, I mean, I tried, but sometimes it doesn't matter how much you try. It's just no good. Okay, anyway, that was number 5 on my list of top 5 dumpster fires in the life of Sarah Jane Woodall. Just kidding. They weren't all dumpster fires. Like I said, they were all good guys in their way, especially the first 4, and even the last guy. I mean, he has many fine qualities, and like I said, I'm not here to throw anyone under the bus, because Lord knows I certainly have my share of unattractive habits, I guess you could say, or lack of habits. Actually, no boyfriend I ever had has complained about my armpits. A real man doesn't care, you know? And also, I think before you knock it, try that pheromone thing, you know? Listen, guys, this Valentine's Day, sniff your lady's armpit and see what I'm talking about. You know, maybe, ladies, I'll be posting this video on Wednesday, so that gives you a few days to not shave. Let him take a good sniff. Don't wear deodorant. And see how that turns out for you. I mean, I think there really is some science to it, or at least that's what I tell myself. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this fun but slightly awkward walk down memory lane with me and my dumpster fire of a romantic life. I mean, just kidding, my colorful cast of characters I've dated in the past. Happy Valentine's Day!